a show on the road. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the year 2020. This will be our first meeting, January the 6th. Good morning. Good morning. This is also my first meeting as the chairman of the board. Thank you to Hildy Angus for the wonderful 2019 that she led us in. So we'll begin the meeting this morning with the invocation led by Jenny Anderson, the clerk of the board, and then we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. If you please stand.
Heavenly Father, we ask that you guide and direct our meeting so that it is full of productivity and respect for one another. Help us to engage in meaningful discussion, allow us to grow closer as a board, and nurture the bonds of our communities. We ask that you watch over and keep our employees safe as they go about their daily duties and deliver them home safely at the end of the workday. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. Today, as we salute our flag, let us remember the men and women in armed services who are serving our country. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the Board of Supervisors may by motion recess into executive session to receive legal advice from the board's attorney on any item contained in this agenda. So I'll entertain a motion and action to call for an executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for the executive session to be held on January 21st at 9 a.m. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. I need a motion and action to approve waiving the reading in full of the items presented for discussion, adoption, and approval at this meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Okay, going on to the official business to come before the board. Number one would be discussion of pending or contemplated litigation claims or demands. Mr. Esplin.
Nothing to report to the board, thank you.
Very good. Next item is committee and/or legislative reports. Supervisor Johnson.
Nothing this morning, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Gould.
None today, Madam Chairman.
Supervisor Angus.
I do have something.
All right.
On January 19th, I attended the White House Summit on Transforming Mental Health Treatment to Combat Homelessness, Violence, and Substance Abuse in D.C. The audience was mostly mental health care workers, psychiatrists, etc., and elected officials. Our representatives Leo Biasucci and State Senator Nancy Bartow were also in attendance. Dr. Drew Pinsky, yes, that Drew Pinsky, started off with the history of U.S. mental health treatment policy, and it was an eye-opener. The bottom line is that now modern belief is that what we have been doing for the last two decades is simply not working. I think we can all see that in the news and in our own communities. It was so interesting that I would encourage people to listen to the presentation. I'll post it on my Facebook page, and if I may, have it posted on the county website. It was streamed by C-SPAN. The first panel was the need for reform panel, which was not only talked about those needs, but gave solutions as well. Alex Azar, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, spoke next and explained how the Trump administration plans to change some of these models that have failed its patients and the communities. The panel continued with elected officials who have put programs in place that seems to be working to reduce recidivism in the jails, and I'll talk more about that in a few minutes. The most interesting local elected official was a county supervisor from Chatham County, which is Savannah, Georgia, whose needs sounded a lot like ours. The problems across the country, our jails are now forced to act like mental health facilities because there are very few mental health beds in most rural areas. They are not trained for these issues. Our jails should not be doing that. The last panel was Federal Leader Perspective Panel, and that panel included HUD Secretary Ben Carson, Presidential Advisor Kellyanne Conway, and Jim Carroll, who is the Director of the Office of National Drug Control Policy, or AKA the Drug Czar. As that panel was starting up, President Trump made an unscheduled visit to this meeting and made it to thank the people who are working in this system every day. He said he understood how difficult it was, and he promised that there would be more money available and, more importantly, a different model for healthcare workers where they weren't handcuffed by the archaic rules now in place. I know the audience members appreciated him showing up. He said it was his top priority, and there will be many money and help available. This was honestly probably the best government meeting I have ever attended. The day after I met with the Office of National Drug Control Policy, who brought in people who are in charge of rural areas. We discussed our unique problems, and they have been sending me ideas of who to talk to and who gives grants for mental health and addiction care. Also, this week I was invited to the Yavapai County, or late last week, I was invited to the Yavapai County Board of Supervisor meeting by Chairman Craig Brown. I was under the impression that they were going to pass a resolution to become a Second Amendment sanctuary county like Mojave County did. When I got there, I was informed that the board had instead opted for a proclamation of support for the Second Amendment. No sanctuary county designation, nor the statement of withholding funds to enforce any laws that infringe on our constitutional right to keep and bear arms. When I got to the meeting at 8 a.m., the meeting starts at 9, there was a line around the building. Over 500 people, patriots, showed up to ask their elected officials to follow the Mojave County resolution. I spoke, as well as their sheriff and Penny Pugh, representing Congressman Paul Gosar, about the need for the words sanctuary county. People spoke for over 3 hours. At the end, the board decided to table the discussion, listen to their constituents, and come back with stronger wording. I was very proud to be a part of that, and the people of Yavapai County who came out in the freezing weather were awesome. After that meeting, I met with Yavapai Sheriff Scott Masher and Deputy Sheriff David Rhodes, and he'll be running for sheriff next year. I had heard that they have a program for integrated screening in the jail that's called Reaching Out. That is working very well. I've also heard there is legislation this year to make grants available to counties who use this program, and I'm researching what all that could mean for Mojave County. I hope to work with Sheriff Schuster and the jail and the courts. If there is a program out there that would help the mentally ill and addicts and keep them out of jail, I want to know about it. I will keep you posted in the weeks and months ahead. On that note, we have some great news. The Drug Treatment Center in Bullhead City that I've been working with WestCare and the state on for almost 2 years will have its ribbon cutting on February 7th. The residential treatment center will be a 16-bed, 28-day program for women only. This was funded by the state, private funds, and will be run by WestCare. No county taxpayer dollars were used for this. I will give you more details next meeting, but if you are interested, please save the date. Thank you very much.
Okay, good report. And I did watch the video of the meeting in Yavapai County, so thank you for going up there. Supervisor Watson, do you have anything?
Thank you, Chairman Bishop. Just a brief report this morning. Pleased to report that all the mayors for the Colorado River region, which would include Mojave, La Paz, and Yuma counties, have by resolution supported our effort to keep the fourth priority water from transfer off the Colorado River. And I'll provide resolutions to everybody through the clerk before the day is over. Thank you.
Good report. Excellent. Okay, going on to the county manager's report. Do you have anything for us?
I have no report today, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to approve the October 21st and November 4th Board of Supervisors minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion is second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, going on to the call to the public. Those wishing to address the board at the call of the public regarding matters not on the board agenda must fill out and submit to the clerk a call to the public request to speak form located in the back of the room. Okay, our first speaker is Joy Bancroft. If you'd give us your name, you have 3 minutes
Can I
to,
approach with some pictures?
if you'd give it to the clerk of the board, that'll be fine.
Good morning, Madam Chair and the board. My name is Joy Bancroft. I live at 4682 Linden in Topak, Arizona. First, let me thank Ron Gould and his assistant Barbara for spending 2 hours and listening to our concerns about properties in disarray and issues in our community. My last 2 months speaking before you, I have been in effort to bring to your attention our concerns about residential properties that are dilapidated, storage violations, hazardous safety issues. While we made progress with the fire department and code enforcement, today I wanted to show you some of the properties we have been dealing with and some of the properties that we drive by every day. We look forward to meeting code enforcement to discuss, which I'm hoping we're going to be able to do that. And all these properties affect us in many ways. So if it's acceptable, can I show properties? Is that acceptable?
Yes.
Okay.
I thought you wanted to come and get the photographs back, and we hadn't quite
Nope,
looked at
I
them
have a
yet.
copy. Those are yours.
Yeah, whatever you want to do. Your 3 minutes or...
Okay, I might take a little longer. I hope not. But anyway,
you're-
here's the first one. This is a property that I can tell you a little bit about them. This is a property that was a single wide 4 years ago, and a derelict came in and brought all this stuff and started ransacking things. So these are some of the pictures. This is one property that he brought in all kinds of things. Sorry, I wish it was bigger. And started adding things and ransacking and living there. And he has been kind of intimidated out of our community. So he is long gone. This is, again, one property. This is a property that over 8 years has been sitting because it's been raided. It was a meth lab, was raided. It's been sitting like this for 8 years. The neighbor across the street told me that, this is how I tell these people, they're derelicts that come in at night, do their thing in there, make noise, upset his dog. We've seen children on bicycles stop in there. It is a hazardous building, according to the fire department. Been here around the corner from my house, by the way, been there 8 years or more sitting like this. This is a home that just houses cars. Very small piece of property, houses lots of cars, which is a violation. And next door is a car building a home very close. And on the other side is some trees that the neighbors knocked down that is dry and would burn in a second. This is the same property. Okay. And this is a home that they are collecting things, they're collecting items and just throwing it on their property. I don't know what they do with them. Oh, shoot. I just have a few more. Sorry. This is a burned out house that looked like originally that house I showed you with all the cars. This is what burnt, and the fire department couldn't even barely handle it because it kept burning. And one more. This is a property that has trees and whatnot, and has a carport that is full of boxes, like this, full of boxes, and been stored there for years. And then one more property, if I may, please, thank you. Oh, shoot, I tore it up. And then this is a property that is housing trailers, and he's making a compound with trailers. And he is, looks like this, and he has all this trash in the back. And so I apologize. He has all this trash in the back, and refrigerators, trash along the fence. He houses everything in the back so you can't see it from the front. So that's all I want to share. I appreciate you looking at our pictures, but this is very important to us. Is Mr. Gould knows that we've spoke on this many times, and we're hoping that we can get a lot of help with from code enforcement. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs.
sorry.
Bancroft. And I was going to suggest that you contact Supervisor Gould.
We
and
did-
He
we
can
have-
direct
we-
you on
we
what
have talked
department
about
to lodge your complaints with.
Thank you. I appreciate your
Okay,
time.
next
I tore them.
we have Rick DeShinger. And you can correct me on my pronunciation if you'd give us your name, please.
You got it pretty close. It's Dishinger.
All right.
Thank you. Joy, I don't know what you did up here, but there we go. Good morning and Happy New Year. My name is Rick Dishinger. I live at 4942 Mission Drive, Topak, Arizona. In previous visits, our Concerned Citizen Group has talked about the interconnectedness of 4 main agencies needed in order to help our community be the best it can be as a decent place to live. When law enforcement, child protective services, code enforcement, and fire departments can cohesively work together, our community and county will benefit. Our sheriff's department is paying attention to crime in our area. He's working his posse program, obviously working on recruitment, and also working with our neighborhood watch and civic groups, and we really appreciate that. We also have been working with our local fire board and fire chief to establish its role in making Golden Shores safer, and hence how it works together with Child Protective Services. They have indicated they are not a policy-making body. They authorize expenditures and they hire a chief. They and the chief have reiterated they have no power to do fire prevention, amazing, or work on the abatement of hazardous materials or similar situations. So our group has 3 questions. 1, who, if anyone, does the fire board answer to, our local board? Number 2, who, if anyone, does the chief answer to? And number 3, who is the Mojave County Fire Chief or Fire Marshal, and does he or she have jurisdiction in Golden Shores? I am assuming you would agree that best practices of a great fire program would be prevention first, safety of employees second, and fire suppression third. We are down 1 firefighter now due to a lack of prevention. You and we are paying his medical leave as we speak. If our agencies can develop a cooperative plan, we can accomplish much more over a short period of time. And again, I say to you, our community is willing to help. And I thank you for your time. Are there any questions?
We're not allowed to engage in back and forth conversation, but I would suggest that you contact your fire board members or go to one of their meetings.
And that's why I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next is Jamie Morgaine.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Jem Morgan. I am a Kingman resident, constituent 1 district constituent. So I'm here today to talk about systemic racism. And I very much appreciate Supervisor Angus coming over and speaking with me this morning. It has reshaped what I need to say today. Because we've been coming here meeting after meeting, and we're talking about the problem of systemic racism in Mojave County. But the important question that she asked me is, what do you see as the solution for that And I think that that is the most important question. Now, I feel like I've been coming to this board offering solutions, but clearly it's not being heard as solutions. It's being heard as criticism and criticalness, and that is not my intention. So the solution to racist overt acts, that was one of the other things that Supervisor Angus talked about. We have that in place already. When someone's values and beliefs get translated into some kind of overt action that we can see, we have those mechanisms in place. We have laws. We have those mechanisms in place. Systemic racism is when those values and beliefs are invisibly shaping policy, shaping decision-making, and that's where the problem is. In this case, Lawana Gillette, she sits on the Planning and Zoning Commission. She signed, as every appointed applicant signs, a code of ethics that is about beliefs. It's not about action. That's about beliefs. It says that I believe that all people, the diversity, and all of those things that I've come here and talked about before. So the question is, what do we do? How do we hold people accountable when those values and beliefs are contrary to those codes of ethics and those oaths of office that we take? That's where we are on this issue. So I would really love for that conversation to continue, because we do need to find solutions for how systemic racism is affecting Mojave County, because it's invisible. It's not the kinds of things that we can point to and hold accountable in the same way, but we still need to hold it accountable. One of the solutions is what Governor Ducey did. I denounce Lawana Gillette's words. That's a way of holding each other accountable to that oath, to that code of ethics. These words are not congruent with Arizona values, is what he said. That's accountability. We need to have that in Mojave County as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Tim Woods.
Good morning and Happy New Year. Congratulations, Madam Chair, Board of Supervisors. My name is Tim Woods. I am the General Manager of Mojave County Fairgrounds. Just wanted to give you, we've going to sign 2 new rodeos this year. One of the rodeos is a qualifying rodeo for a Junior National Championship in Las Vegas. The other rodeo, I'm working with Senator Borelli, that will be a veterans-only rodeo. If all participants in this rodeo will be active duty or veterans of the United States military. Little side note, Senator Borelli was just inducted into the Military Cowboy Hall of Fame. Also, we here at the fairgrounds won the Reader's Choice Award from the Daily Miner as the best event center in the city of Kingman. And one last note, the first of next month we are having extreme midget wrestling, so everybody sign up for that because it's going to be a lot of fun. Thank y'all very much.
Extreme midget wrestling. It's a really big event.
All right, next we have a presentation, but before that, I want to notify everybody that we're going to be moving to the front, items number 38, 39, and 40 at the request of the applicant. And then we'll go to the presentation after that, because I understand there's a lot of people here that wanted to speak on those issues. So item number 38 be an open public meeting. I'll open that meeting. Discussion of possible action reference. Approve the adoption of the Board of Supervisors resolution number 2020-008, a rescission and cause the property to revert to an RO, single-family residential manufactured homes prohibited. This was recommended as approval by unanimous vote of the commission. So,
Madam Chairman, I believe the applicant has withdrawn their application.
okay,
If you can
so
have Mr. Walsh come up, that would be clarifying.
Good morning, Chairman Bishop. Members of the board, Supervisor Gould is correct. The applicant emailed us on Friday and asked that this be withdrawn from the agenda. So that was the request. Both this item, 38, 39, and 40, the applicant asked that these items be withdrawn.
Okay, Mr. Esplin, do we need to let those that came to speak on those items speak, or can we just close the public hearing and withdraw all 3 items?
I think in the past, I believe we've just not had the public hearing. We just said it's done, take no action, and no further action is taken.
Okay,
So
on all
I believe
3
we can
items
do
at
that.
the
Yeah,
same time?
we've in the past, when the applicant has withdrawn it, we've said, okay, withdraw. That's my recollection. Could I hear from the clerk of the board? Is that correct? Okay. So
Madam
I'd say
Chair.
it's done. If they don't want to, if they want to withdraw it, then they withdraw it, and we'd be done with it.
Okay.
Madam Chair, may I ask a question? Well, we're still in the open public hearing, but can I ask a question too?
It's on the agenda. You can ask the
Okay,
question.
I want to ask it too. So the applicant has rescinded these 3, but from what I read, he reserves the right to bring it back.
He, at this point, and I'm going to lean on, see if I can have Chris help me, but my understanding is that right is the board's. Basically, he's asking that these items be withdrawn. They'll be withdrawn. Any future changes to the property would require a new application by the applicant.
So he'd have to start all over again.
That's correct.
I just want people to understand what's going on here.
I'm getting a nod, so that is correct.
Okay.
And to me, just to add in there, if he does wish to come back, at that time, there will be a public hearing. So the public will have the opportunity to speak at that time. But if he's asking to withdraw it, we withdraw it, be done with it, and move forward. That's what I'd recommend.
Madam Chair, would we have to do we have to vote on setting a public hearing, like the whole process again? Or when he would just say, okay, I'm ready, and then how would everybody know?
He would reapply to planning and zoning, or he'd come to our office, he'd come to Development Services, reapply for the rezone. It would go to Planning and Zoning Commission and then come.
So the whole process starts again. That was my initial question. Okay.
Exactly. It would have to be reposted and everything, so the
Correct.
neighborhood affected would be aware of it and advertised.
That's correct.
Okay. All right, then, items number 38, 39, and 40 are hereby withdrawn.
May we speak for a second? We're actually the developer that was applicating. We put an application for that, and the owner of the property didn't inform us that they said that. Can I speak with you for a second?
We're done with it. I would move forward. My recommendation is to move
Yeah,
forward
we
with
can
it.
meet with you after the board meeting.
And the rescinding of it, we're not talking about that one. We weren't informed of this, and actually I had something I wanted to speak with you before.
Actually, I think we're done with it at this point. If you want to make an appointment and come in and speak to the supervisors or the attorney, we'd be happy to oblige you there. But we're going to go on with the meeting, and we.
Actually, has to close the public hearing.
Not that I'm aware of.
But we were the applicant, not the homeowner. We were the applicant.
Are you may I ask, are you the applicant that's asking that it be rescinded? Is this the person that's applied for it?
The one that submitted all the application, we're the one that paid for it.
I don't understand.
Yeah, they can't apply for it for somebody else's property.
The application, we hadn't finished buying the property, so the
Mr. Walsh, can you clear this up for us,
Yes, I'm
please?
sorry. Sorry for the confusion. The applicant was by the company looking to place the solar panels on the property. The homeowner, or not the homeowner, the property owner is the one that asked that the item be withdrawn. Typically, in order to apply for this, you need the property owner's permission in order to do a rezone or rescission, any of that on their property. The owner initially approved that, but has since asked that be withdrawn.
Okay.
Is that?
Okay.
Well, is this the applicant is all I care about?
This is the applicant. The owner asked that it be withdrawn. The applicant this is the applicant that applied for the rezone for the property.
Okay. So if that person is withdrawing it, then we'll be done with it. If we're not done with it, then we need to have a public hearing, is the point I'm trying to get at. If we're done with it, we're done with it.
The applicant is not withdrawing it, the property owner is.
Okay.
Okay, so there's no reason to go forward because the property owner has withdrawn. Okay, that settles that.
Good.
Okay, we're going to go on now to our presentation.
You need to close the public hearing.
Yeah, you didn't close.
Well, actually, I did say I opened the public hearing, so I will close that public hearing. And I don't think we need a motion or anything, we're just withdrawing those 3 items.
Wanted to speak to them. The reason why I wanted to get up there and speak, so that they were aware of what was going on. Because they're kind of blindsided by what just happened.
And okay, then if I could just say, you can take the conversation outside, you can talk about it there, but this matter has been withdrawn. The owner has withdrawn it, so therefore we're not moving forward. If we are going to have a discussion about it, then we need to properly open the public hearing, have a discussion, and do it. But if we're not going to have it, then we need to move forward with it.
Right. We're not going to have a public hearing. And,
Correct.
You know, that can be challenged later if you want to do that, but for this meeting right here and right now, it's closed.
Because the owner has withdrawn the application.
Okay. Thank you all for coming so far. Okay, we will go on. Excuse me, you're out of order. I've given you the remedy, and that's the way it's going to be. We're going to go on to our presentation at this time.
Okay, so you have another I was just asking if I could use that since you were leaving, but if you're not leaving, then we can take it outside. That's all I was asking.
Thank you.
I was not trying to be a
Sure.
out of order. I was just trying to use the intercom. That was it.
Okay, we have our presentation to the cactus cleaner groups of Golden Valley and Dolan Springs this morning.
Wow, so little. Gary.
So 2019 has been another successful year for our erase program, thanks to the exceptional erase staff, Mr. Todd Davis and his staff, and the Golden Valley Cactus Cleaner founder, Mr. Wayne Hollins, and the Dolan Springs founder, Mr. William Tillinger. I'd like to pay special recognition also to Mark Shemensky for his individual contribution in cleaning up roadside litter, removing litter from over 30 miles of paved road shoulders from Shinnerup to South Chinley and Agua Fria to the north, inspiring all the other neighbors and friends in the area to come forward. So I'll turn this over to Todd and let you explain everything to us.
We might need to wait just a second. People are saying they can't hear yet.
Okay.
Chairman Bishop, Supervisors, rest of the board, Happy New Year. Thank you for giving me the time to do this really short but important presentation. 2019 was a successful year for illegal dumping prosecutions submitted by Erase, with 23 misdemeanors and felonies combined. Also, Erase was able to assist with the removal of over 546 tons of trash and approximately 9,720 tires. Last year's accomplishments would not be possible without the selfless volunteer help from the community that freed us from spending extra time on dump site litter remediation and cleanup projects in our large county. This is why Chairman Bishop and I would like to acknowledge 3 men that donate their own time, personal equipment, gas, and money to lead a cleanup group and pick up litter on a regular basis in the Golden Valley and Dolan Springs area. They have also helped motivate others to become involved with the cleanup effort in the county. Chairman Bishop, would you like to join me in presenting Wayne Hollins, Bill Terwilliger, and Mark Schmidicki with a certificate of appreciation and a golden grabber? The certificate reads, Certificate of Appreciation awarded to these men and the cactus cleaners on the 6th day of January 2020 for their relentless efforts to make Mojave County a place where we are proud to call home. The cactus cleaners of Golden Valley and Dolan Springs, Arizona, have volunteered countless hours throughout the year 2019, removing trash, and have set a wonderful example for our youth. Thank you for the ongoing support from all the community volunteers, the county supervisors, the BLM, the Sheriff's Office, and other county departments that help make our race program a success. Would you gentlemen like to come up?
That's a grabber. Yeah. Like, you can reach down or reach up. I don't use them often. Although they come in handy if pick anything up off the floor.
I'd like to just take a moment to thank the board for their support throughout the years that we've been doing this, and going to give you a report where we're on 2019. For the Golden Valley Cactus Cleaners, we picked up 106,000 pounds of trash, 3 boats, and 5,201 tires that weighed 136,000 pounds. Since we started this project of ours in 2015, we've cleaned up over 470,000 pounds of trash, 39 boats, 16,689 tires that weighed 452,000 pounds. So far we've picked up a combined total 922,000 pounds, including tires and trash combined together. So that means, unfortunately, this year we'll be able to hit 1 million pounds, hopefully difficultly, but that's where we're at right now, and we appreciate all your support. Thank you.
Wayne, before you sit down, can you explain to the audience that injury was not caused by your volunteerism?
Yes, I did this on my own time, and unfortunately, I'm having to recover on their time, but just be careful when you're moving boats around.
Oh, yeah. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Erase the entire Board of Supervisors and the community residents greatly appreciate the time and the hard work and dedication that the three of you put forth, and I'm proud that to join Todd Davidson in giving you this recognition. You certainly have earned it. So thank you very much, and carry on. Thank you. Okay, we'll now go on to the consent agenda. The following items listed under the consent agenda will be considered as a group and acted upon by one motion with no separate discussion of said items unless a board member so requests. In the event the item will be removed from the consent agenda, and separate discussion and action will be taken. So we'll start with Supervisor Johnson. Do you have anything you would like removed, sir?
Item number 7.
Okay, Supervisor Gould.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Number 13, number 16, number 17, number 21, number 23, and that is it.
Okay, Supervisor Angus.
Number 14. Oh, no, never mind. 15's already taken off?
No.
No.
That's the one I want, 15.
Okay, 15. Supervisor Watson.
Supervisor Bishop, I'm happy to report that the one item that I had has been called by Supervisor Gould.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda minus items number 7, 13, 15, 16, 17, 21, and 23.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor say aye, please.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll move on to item number 7. Approve the request by Mojave Valley Fort Mojave Community Park Committee to waive the permit fees. So, Buster Johnson, I'll turn this over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Walsh. People are requesting us to go back and waive the fees on the septic system that was put in illegally. Now, you first became aware of that in 2014?
In 2014, the applicant submitted a notice for a site investigation, which is typical. When somebody's looking to do a septic system, they first come in and notify us that they're doing a site investigation. Once that site investigation is complete, then they fill out an application, submit that for a septic system. So before they can submit the application, they have to do a site investigation. We received notice that they were going to be doing a site investigation, but we received no application following that. And I'd have to ask Mr. Patil how many notifications for site investigations we receive a year, and how many of those get followed up on with an actual application. But the only notice that we received on this specific one was that they would be doing a site investigation in 2014.
Okay. When did you become aware that there was a septic system in place?
So we became aware of the septic system in place on September, I had it right here. September 6, 2019, we had a inspector go out and inspect the trailer based on some of the conversations that had happened. Here, the Park Association submitted for a permit to place the trailer on the property in March of 2019. In September, they requested that we inspect the foundations. We went out, inspected the foundations, and that's when we identified plumbing coming from the trailer going into the ground. Initially, we assumed that it was going to the permitted septic system that was installed on site, which would cause problems because that septic system was sized for the bathrooms that were installed on site. So we contacted the Park Association, said, there's a problem here if this is connected to that septic tank's not large enough. That's when they informed us that there's a separate septic tank that was installed for this specific trailer.
Now, is this the trailer that was given to the county?
It is.
Wasn't that trailer given to us as a storage trailer?
And yes, that initially it was given to us, and we permitted as a storage trailer.
And now it has a mysterious septic tank supposedly underneath it. Isn't state law, isn't there a Indian sewer line right out in front of that property or across the street?
I'm not aware of a sewer. I don't know one way or the other whether there's a sewer line right in front of it or not.
If there is one there, doesn't the state law say that you're supposed to hook up to an existing sewage system instead of putting in septic tanks, or isn't that recommended?
It's recommended. 80Q basically states that if you're within, and I don't have the exact footage, but if you're within so many feet of a sewer line, you should connect to that, unless you can show they have certain cost limits as well. If it's going to cost so much to extend the sewer line to where you are, or if it's going to cost so much to install the septic and reach out to that. And I'm looking at Mr. Patil to help me on that just to confirm.
And I can't quote you the specific section, but the Administrative Code Title 18, Chapter 9 sets limitations on how and when you can hook up to sewer. Essentially, it states if there is a sewer line on any boundary of your property and you come into permitted on-site wastewater treatment system, such as a septic tank, you are required to hook up to that sewer unless you can prove that it's too costly, and they do set those costs. And don't quote me exactly on this, but I believe the connection cost, if it's more than $6,000, or the construction cost, which would include laterals, is more than $3,000. And if it's a commercial system, I don't quite recall verbatim, but it's some dollar figure times your daily design flow. If it exceeds that cost, then you can avoid hooking up as well and do on-site wastewater treatment.
Thank you. What is this building now going to be used for that it was storage?
Conversations with the Park Association, they've mentioned possible use for a referee station. Referees reffing games would come here, and to be honest, I'm not 100% clear, but that's the conversations that I've heard is basically possible referee station or office for the park.
Okay. Looking at the affidavit or the package that was submitted from the outside consultant, I don't see a size of the tank. Do we know what size the tank is that's in there?
I don't at this point. We don't have that at this point. That would be if once they submit an application for the tank, that's when that would be. We would have that information.
But they're asking to waive the fees. I mean, they should have dug it up. I didn't see a map in there, a site plan. I didn't see a place where the clean out was. I didn't see anything to say what size the tank was. One thing is, if we have people in outlying areas, from time to time they'll put in septic tanks or 55-gallon drums and wait for us to catch them. But this is a organization that supposedly had builders and everybody else on. They know the rules. I'm a little miffed that we would have an installer in the area that would install septic tanks without getting permits from the county. I guess, as you can probably guess, I'm not supportive of waiving the fees on this. I think that this is way out of line. These people knew better. They went ahead and just flaunted our rules in our face. That's all I have, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Walsh.
Thank you.
Okay, does anyone have any other questions of Mr. Walsh?
I'll take a stab.
Supervisor Gould.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Walsh, so they've had an engineer come out and take a look at the system.
It's a registered sanitarian, which they're not an engineer, but they design septic tanks. They do the site investigations and that type of stuff. So it's somebody that's professionally knowledgeable about septic systems.
Okay, is that a requirement that we have for an as-built permit?
You got to come up to the mic.
There are no specific requirements for an as-built permit. Where we were working with the applicant to take a look at the design aspects of the system to see if it actually could fit into the administrative code and the engineering criteria for septic systems, as we've done a limited number of times on other systems. And typically we require them to do an inspection, give us the big item we look at is the leach field. That's my biggest concern. And typically, she did give us quite a bit of information on the leach field, depth of groundwater, and how it likely meets the setback requirements. And we'll know more once the application is filed, and we get kind of an as-built design, more or less, that we would review. And if it doesn't specifically meet the requirements, they can fix it.
Sure. Thank you. Normally, I would not be supportive of waiving the fee, but since this is a park association and it's a park for public use, then I'm supportive of waiving the fee. It seems like they're getting straightened out and not trying to do things without permits like they seem to have done in the past. So, thank you.
So I have a question. If this request is denied, then what? Do they have to remove the existing septic tank such as it is?
So I guess there would be options. If this request were denied, they have the option of paying the fee themselves, which would hopefully be the route they would go. If they pay the fee themselves and we would accept the application, we would process it, make sure that it, as Mr. Patillo mentioned, make sure that it meets our requirements. If it doesn't, they would be required to fix that before we would permit the septic tank. If they decided not to pay the fees, basically we would go the route of an unpermitted septic tank and basically force the removal of that.
And the septic tank is under the mobile home?
I don't believe it's, to be honest, I don't know exactly where it is. I don't believe it's under it. I think from what I understand, is it's near it. It's just outside of it. So.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. I just want to remind you, and you can confirm it, that this park committee has put in tens of thousands of dollars in both money and labor into this park. So I just want that on the record. It's not like they're asking for, for freebies, because that's who they are. you know, so I'm for it because they're making this park a really great park for their community.
And I don't have the exact numbers, but from what I understand, that would be correct, yeah. I believe Parks would have that information.
Supervisor Watson, do you have any questions, comments?
Thank you, Chairman Bishop. I don't have any questions or comments, but I will make a motion to approve this request by the Fort Mojave Community Park Committee.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Going on to item number 13. This was pulled by Supervisor Gould. Approve the adoption of Board of Supervisor Resolution number 2020-011, approving contract number 302-20.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm curious who decides what projects get done with this grant money?
Chairman Bishop, Supervisor Gould, this is for owner-occupied housing rehabilitation. Projects would come off our already established waiting list that we have countywide. And in this particular grant application, we're required to serve 5 elderly families or individuals and 5 disabled families. So we'd have to look at our waiting list and see who's next on the list, then if that person is elderly or disabled, and then also what their income level is, because they have to income qualify.
This is different than the Community Development Block Grant Program?
Yes, yeah, that is an activity that can be funded under CDBG, but this is a separate source of competitive funds called home funds that are federal funds that are granted through Arizona Department of Housing.
So how do we determine the priority of these projects in general? If we're pulling these folks off of the Community Development Block Grant Program, who decides the order in which those projects are done?
Well, they're put on the waiting list by date and time, and then there's a certain preferences that each one of these, we have them fill out an application, so they turn in their application. On that application, there's listed, you know, are you a veteran? Are you disabled? What's your age? And so then we look at that, and depending upon the funding we get in, if it's required that we serve certain populations, then we will pull off of that waiting list. So it's basically date and time, and then the individual preference that the grant requires.
Okay, so it's basically it's in the order that they apply.
Exactly.
And then they might get bumped up if they're in one of the classes that's receiving preference, depending on what grant.
Exactly.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Madam Chair? I just want to make sure I heard this right, because this has nothing to do with the Community Development Block Grant.
No, it doesn't. It's a separate source of funding. Now, owner-occupied housing rehab is an activity that can be funded under CDBG, but these are home funds. This is completely separate.
It's very confusing. Okay. Any other questions, comments? I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chairman, I move that item 13 be adopted.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Item number 15, this is pulled by Supervisor Angus. Approve the award of the following pre-qualified indigent defense attorney. It's 2019-09.
Okay, yeah, I was going through this, and looks like there's some changes going on, and I just thought maybe now's the time to explain why things are changing like this. Is Blake here? Oh.
Madam Chairman, members of the board, I'll try to start. I'm not sure what changes, but if I can provide you any information, I will.
Well, it says here that the solicitation is intended to replace all county contracts for indigent defense attorney services affected as of June 30th, 2018, which originated under county's prior department known as Criminal Justice Services, CJS, which is no longer existent. So, you know, I think this is probably a better question for someone from the courts.
Madam Chairman, our indigent defense director was called away on an emergency, and I'll try my best to answer any questions that you may have. I believe, obviously, what their role is on all conflicts or overflow cases. They try to have a roster of qualified attorneys available to take those cases. And so the procurement of those services are turned over to our procurement department to actually handle. One of the questions that I think you're asking, has anything changed since the contract, with the contracts or the costs for this upcoming year? And that would have to come before the board to establish a pay schedule. I believe this is a standard contract, if I'm not mistaken, that's been used last year and the year before to procure these services. And the language might have been inadvertently carried over from addressing changes because of changes that occurred probably in 2013 with our indigent defense services. But correct me if I'm wrong, please, Becky.
Yeah. No, that's correct. The process itself has been consistent with what we've been doing over the past year. It's a standing solicitation. Interested attorneys provide an application packet that's then reviewed by a committee with the courts, and they approve or deny, and then they send that to us to bring to the board for approval.
Who ultimately oversees the billing of these contract lawyers?
Madam Chairman, Supervisor Angus, that would be our Indigent Defense Services Director, Blake Schroeder.
Okay. Okay. All right. I have a lot to say about that, but now's not the time. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. And then with that, I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion, a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Item 16 was pulled by Supervisor Gould. The approved and signed sole source contract number 20-SS-01, Sacramento Wash renovation project to Vision Landscape and Design.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm just curious why we're doing this revegetation project. So it's probably a question for Public Works.
And I see Steve just walked down, so.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Supervisor Gould, members of the board. Excellent question. This project is ancillary to the overall development of the Sacramento Wash Bridge on Oatman Highway and off-site improvements. What happened was, as part of the county's acquisition of rights to improve lands across the refuge for the off-site improvements supporting the Oatman Highway Bridge, there was a condition by which the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service placed on such acceptance, and that was in a ratio of 2-to-1, 2-to-1 being the county would revegetate certain new lands in the refuge in exchange for lands that the refuge was surrendering for improvement, off-site improvements. The county agreed under its programmatic agreement with U.S. Fish and Wildlife to revegetate that area. We undertook unsuccessfully 2 solicitations for this revegetation work, and in working diligently with procurement, and they did an outstanding job. We negotiated a fair price, almost consistent with that adopted in the FY20 budget for this revegetation work.
It's interesting if you look at the breakdown of that bid. We're spending $60,000 to irrigate $1,400 worth of trees, or actually 20 honey mesquites, 20 screwbean mesquites, and 25 creosote bushes.
Right.
It seems like we could come up with a better way to irrigate those things temporarily so that to establish them, because we're not going to be able to irrigate them continuously.
I believe there's a, Supervisor Gould, I believe there's a long-term maintenance commitment to that irrigation effort, so.
Yeah, I saw that too, and that it was, the water source was 1,200 feet away.
Right, right.
That U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is going to charge us $7,000 for the water, which just seems ridiculous.
I know.
But I think we're kind of over a barrel. I don't think we, at this point, there's much we can do other than fulfill the contract that we agreed to.
Correct. I would agree and recommend the board consider that in their decision. And this has been, for a long time coming, consistent with the approach that the county has undertaken to be able to have carried out so successfully these remarkable improvements in the area.
And it will be nice. Areas look bad and barren ever since it burned a few years back. And I think the contract also includes burying some logs and whatnot. So hopefully we'll get it all done and it'll look nice. I just can't get over the $60,000. So it's almost $70,000 just for the temporary irrigation system. Right. So we may need to put our heads together and see if we can figure out a cheaper way to do this in the future.
In the future, correct.
Sure. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, what's your pleasure?
I move that item 16 be adopted.
Second. Okay, I have a motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Item number 17. This was pulled by Supervisor Gould. Approve the utilization of the Sourcewell Cooperative Contract number 120617-CAT with Empire Power Systems.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm just curious about the purchase of a genset for construction of the gas system. Do we not have sufficient line power to the landfill to run the construction process?
Chairman Bishop, Supervisor Gould, that's correct. We do not currently have line power out to the landfill there. So for this gas system, basically the gas system is being put out to bid. Is out to bid? It's out to bid right now. We needed to get ahead of that construction with this generator in order to run that gas system so that it can be available for startup once that gas system's in place.
Are we investigating extending line power to that site so we can run the thing on line power rather than the generator?
We have, and the cost of that is quite a bit more than the cost of running this generator.
Okay. Thank you.
Interesting.
It's another thing that we have to do that we don't necessarily want to do.
Yep.
Understand.
Correct.
Did you want to make a motion on that?
Yeah. I don't want to, but I will. I move that item 17 be adopted.
Second. Okay, motion is second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, now we'll move down to item number 21. This was pulled by Supervisor Gould. Approve the use of the Mojave County Job Order Contract 15-PS-14-03, JOC Channel Maintenance. Supervisor Gould.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is apparently the repair of the blowout of the levee on Sacramento Wash by the new bridge. I was just curious if this is going to cure the problem or can we expect this to be an ongoing expense?
Madam Chair, Supervisor Gould, the contract, yes, will entail repairing the berm along the east side, parallel to Open Highway along the east side and upstream of the Open Highway bridge that was tied to the Thanksgiving weekend event. It was an event that rose above the anticipated design of the off-site improvements in the bridge. Well, the bridge actually conveyed the flows just fine, but what we did was post-storm, we met on site with the engineer of record and evaluated the berm and why and how it succumbed to that storm event. And we came to learn, and our engineers very astutely observed that the predicted flows that impacted the berm approached the berm in such a manner not consistent with the actual event that happened. So the actual event precipitated flows in certain quantities and direction that was not quite in alignment with the design. And as such, this work will actually reinforce those areas of the berm that were in fact breached by the storm. We're going to work toward raising the height of those breach areas as well as armoring them as well. So we do anticipate that the finished product will actually create a much more resilient berm. Of course, anything is susceptible to a specific magnitude storm, but we like the course of action here and not just restoring it to as-built plan, but actually bettering it, and bettering it with the concurrence of the design engineer, having been directly involved.
No, I agree. They call those training berms?
Yes, and the word training is simply a verb for, or an adjective for the idea of directing the flow.
Okay.
So,
Thank you, sir.
thank you.
Who trained who, huh?
Yeah, apparently we got trained that time, but
Okay, I'll entertain a motion if there is no further
I
discussion.
have a few questions.
Supervisor
if I could.
Watson, absolutely.
Mr. Lutowski, in building this bridge down there, you've encountered a number of obstacles presented by a number of different agencies. U.S. Fish and Wildlife, I think the manager down there was giving us a bad time of that. Could you give me an idea of the magnitude of the design? What type of event can this bridge withstand?
Madam Chair, Supervisor Watson, as part of our success in obtaining the $1 million in federal discretionary grant funding for construction of the bridge, all parties, including Federal Highways, which sponsored the grant, approved a design that accommodates the 2.5-year storm, or 2-year storm, I should say.
A 2-year storm?
Yes, yes. It's the tact of establishing this all-weather crossing was such that it would enable our success toward mitigating the routine events of storm activity that would render open highway closed. Even the smallest of events with that low water crossing would precipitate tremendous sediment deposit. And as a result of this work as well, I should also point out that this is an important project in light of the fact that it's actually going to enable the lessening of sediment deposit on open highways. So if we ever have instances of closure, and this was one kind of unusual example at the Thanksgiving event, but what we found by and large is even where the berm was breached, it was all clean water by and large deposited on the open highway, and clean water dissipates in quite a hurry. But in the past events with that old low water crossing, we call it basically a man-made low water crossing due to a man-made channel, due to a man-made berm that was installed decades ago by the railroad, that channel, because of its narrow features, actually precipitated an increase in velocity of flow, picking up sediment and dropping it on the open highway when we had storm events, and that's just not going to happen here. So I gave you the engineering design criteria for the bridge at 2 years, but in reality, the improvement is going to be able to be quite resilient against most storms, especially in the type of impact realized, if any impact.
Well, in my experience, I've only been here going on 12 years, but we've had a number of 100-year storms.
Absolutely.
And I was wondering, in the next major storm in that area, are we going to have to be doing a lot of repair for that bridge again, or the dike, or are we solving the problem?
Supervisor Watson, we aim that this particular work will make the berm resilient to a level where we have quite a large watershed that will drain, the Sacramento Wash and convey flows underneath Sacramento Wash Bridge. And the project has provided for multiple relief outlets, including some just north of the bridge, as well as the Old Low Water Crossing. The Old Low Water Crossing will actually just take over in a larger event. So what we're anticipating here, and this is as per the engineer of record, a consulting engineer under ADOT, that in the event of a large storm, the actual improvements won't take the brunt of the force, but the Old Low Water Crossing will just go into effect as more of a spillway of sorts for the excess flows that would result from a, say, 25, 50, 100-year storm. Okay. So we expect that the improvements would not be compromised.
In the storm that occurred in Thanksgiving time period, was there any damage to the bridge itself?
No, none whatsoever.
So there's no settling, or there's no problems with the bridge?
It passed the flows that were guided to it very cleanly and very efficiently.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chairman, I move that item 21 be adopted.
Okay, second.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Supervisor Gould also pulled item number 23, approve award and sign contract 19-P-08, inmate telephone services to ICS Solutions. Supervisor Gould.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Rebecca, do we know what our profit margin is on this, since this is a revenue generator to the county? I believe what we discussed back in August was we were making 66%, just off the top of my head.
I believe it was something like that. I would have to go back and take a look. I do believe we have Don Bischoff here today, and he may be able to provide some of those more detailed information.
Good morning. So Supervisor Gould, you're correct. The current contract provides a 66% commission revenue off of the minutes of the phone call. The proposed new contract includes an 82% commission rate. However, the cost of the call has dropped from 21 cents a minute to 15 cents a minute. So the revenue stream basically remains neutral, but the cost of the call has gone down substantially.
So the inmate, can the inmate put money on his account on this telephone system?
Absolutely.
But most of the money does not come from the inmate, I don't think.
Usually not.
I think it comes from the inmates who qualify. They have to be qualified to receive a phone call from the inmate?
There's a number of ways it can happen. A friend or a family member can create a phone account, and that inmate can only call that number. So in other words, if my son or daughter is in jail, I can set up a phone account and they can call me and no one else. So I control basically the inmate's phone activity. If the inmate has funds on their own trust account, then they can call whoever they want, and those funds pull directly from their account. If my son or daughter's in jail and I want to create a phone account but allow them to contact anyone, then I do that, and they can they can make a phone call to anybody they want, but I can't control that.
Interesting. I believe the last time my son was in the pokey, that only qualified people could put money on his books, and that they could only call qualified people. But he's been in prison too, so I don't know if that was the county rule or the state's rule.
We don't, I can't speak to the Department of Corrections. They do have an application process for communications with DOC inmates. When it comes to phone activity, we do not. There are restrictions on some calling numbers, 800 numbers, obviously 900 numbers. The inmates are not allowed to call those numbers, but there's no policy or practice in place that prevents an inmate from being able to place a call to someone just because they're not qualified.
Okay, I could be
If an
confusing.
if an account's in place, then, and the funds are available, then they can make a telephone call.
Okay, I could be confusing the two programs, and I believe that the FCC reduced the rate. The maximum rate before was like 80 cents a minute or something like
The
that.
FCC got involved. There was some action back in the South or the Midwest that caused the FCC to take action. And I would tell you that the last time we renewed this contract, that was something that we looked at. A phone call, 15 or 20-minute phone call, was upwards of about $15 or $17.
That's what I remember.
And when we renewed that contract, we went with a different company, but there were two things that we looked at. As one, and primarily, was to not gouge the people that are primarily who are paying for these phone calls, which is friends and family.
Right, and that's my concern, is that the family is the one footing the bill, but the price is greatly reduced from what it was in my memory.
Yes, and this contract starts to encompass a lot of other communication aspects that we currently don't have. Currently, our contract deals strictly with telephone. This will open it up to video visitation and remote video visitation, among other things. The current video visitation we have is all on-site, so if you wanted to visit with an inmate, you would have to come physically to the jail, and there's a closed video system that you could use. There's no cost to that. But that system is failing. It has been for a couple of years. We've tried to string it along till we could get to this process. And this is going to open up an opportunity for a video visit for a fee from any place that you have basically a computer or smartphone access. Those services are for a fee, but if you still want to do the video visit at no cost, then you can travel to the jail and you can have a video visit on site for no cost.
Thank you, sir.
I would add that on the surface, it looks like the county or the sheriff's office or the jail is making a lot of money, and quite honestly, we do generate a lot of revenue. However, these are special funds, and they can only be spent back to benefit items for the inmates. And quite honestly, last fiscal year, we spent almost as much as we took in providing hygiene products for the inmates, which were required to provide them with the clothing that they wear, the bedding that they have, and so forth. So what you have is, you have the inmates, and in reality, their friends and family, they're actually helping offset the costs of housing and providing for these inmates in the facility. I would add that the other side of this, the remote video visitation, we're very hopeful that this is going to be a big boost for the defense attorneys in being able to communicate with their clients who are in jail, because they can literally get on a smartphone and have some communication with their inmate. It would be secured. And our goal is to have legal defender, public defender, and the contracted defense attorneys would be able to access those services at no cost to them or the county at all.
So are those communications, the non-attorney client communications, subject to recording?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions, comments?
Madam Chairman, I move that item 23 be adopted.
Second?
Second the motion.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, moving on to the public hearings. We already withdrew items 38, 39, and 40, so we'll go on to item number 42, and I'll open the public hearing. Discussion on possible action reference approving the adoption of the standard form uniform video service license agreement and standard form application and affidavit for the issuance of a uniform video service license agreement. So I have no speakers signed up to speak on this item, so I'll close the public hearing and open it up to a possible motion or discussion.
Motion to approve.
Second the motion.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item number 42, I'll open the public hearing on this item. Setting as the Board of Directors for the Golden Valley Improvement District Number 1. Discussion of possible action, Ray approve the adoption of Resolution 20-01 and the proposed amendments to Policy and Procedures Memorandum Number 90-1, as shown in the amendments 19-1, to establish modified guidelines and procedures on billing practices, payment plans, fee refunds, new service fees, backflow requirements, and meter access. So there's no one signed up to speak on this item. I will close the public hearing. Have a
Second motion.
and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion seconded and approved unanimously. Going on to the regular agenda, item 43 is brought to us by Ryan Esplin, our Deputy County Attorney. Discussion and possible action, Ray approved the adoption of Mojave County Ordinance Number 2019-02 and updated a new animal control ordinance. I'll open the public hearing, and we do have speakers signed up on this. And Jennifer Esposito will be our first speaker.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Jennifer Esposito, 3211 East Snavely Avenue, Kingman. At the last meeting, I didn't get the opportunity, because this isn't a court of law where you go back and forth, to answer some of the things or rebut some of the things that Attorney Esplin had to say. I think it feels to me very disingenuous, because he did say, well, I tried to mirror the state law, as much as possible, or something to that effect. But if that were true, he would have chosen the state definition for dog at large. Moreover, he gave the impression that there's an emergency or a rush to act at this meeting or the next meeting because the board has rescinded the horrible ordinance that provisions of which have been on the books apparently since 1980-something. Yes, it did take him over a year to accomplish what I could have done better in a 5-day work week, but the reality is that the state statutes under Title 11 cover everything that the county needs. If the existing ordinance times out at the next meeting, the county just runs under the Title 11 county's animal control provisions. And those are arguably better than what we had before. Now, I have gone back and re-reviewed the city ordinances for Colorado City, Kingman, Bullhead, and Lake Havasu. And of those, they all, oh boy, could use some work. But the one for Lake Havasu is probably the least oppressive. And it's also the largest metropolitan area. So clearly, the sky's not falling in Lake Havasu City, and I would find it a bit absurd that the people in Crystal Beach or Donkey Acres would be subject to a more oppressive ordinance than the people in Lake Havasu City, for example. But the county has the opportunity here under Title 11-1018 to enact their own ordinance as long as they comply with the provisions of rabies and licensing. You can basically scrap the rest of the other stuff and do what you need to do better for Mojave County. And Mr. Esplin was a little bit hedgy about that too. He said, yes, we don't have to seize people's animals and take them from them in a bond hearing without a criminal conviction. We're not compelled to do that. I just took that from the state law because it gives us a method in which we can do that. You don't have to actually deprive people of their due process rights. You don't have to do it at all. You can actually take the time to sit down and craft a really good ordinance that caters to the financial and demographic enforcement things that Mojave County deals with uniquely. You can do better than the state. The state allows you to do that. So there's really no rush to judgment. I object to the forfeiture provision. I object to the anti-tethering provision. I object to the limit law. There are so many things that I object to that I don't have time to go into today, but what I'm saying is you don't have to make this decision now. You don't have to make it next week. You have the opportunity to do better, and I'm encouraging you to do that, and I am open to providing you with those solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Esposito. Our next speaker will be Cynthia Martinez. Ms. Martinez. Good morning. If you just give your name, you've got 3 minutes to speak.
I'm coming in the middle of this discussion.
Could you give us your name, please?
My name is Cynthia Martinez.
Thank you.
I live at 10086 North Avenida Martin, Kingman, Arizona. I'm coming in the middle of this. I read an article in the newspaper that concerned me greatly. I'm in full agreement that this doesn't have to be settled right now. One thing that the article didn't tell me was the size of the property that you're discussing, that the dog cannot run around loose on. And that another thing that concerned me was that you can just arbitrarily walk onto a piece of property and confiscate a dog. For what reason? There was no reason in the article. I haven't had time to read last month's meetings to find out what started this whole thing. I haven't had a chance to do some investigation like this young lady has. I want more time, and nothing has to be settled at this meeting now. I want more time to look into this. My dog has a great big yard that he loves to run around on. He doesn't chase humans. He doesn't eat humans for lunch. But he has a great big huge yard that I don't want him to be restricted just arbitrarily. And I have neighbors that have dogs running around on acreage. What started this whole discussion? I don't know, but I want time to investigate this. This doesn't have to be settled right now unless I'm mistaken, unless I read something into this that's not there. But there's not enough information being printed in the paper or discussed right here to make a decision, I don't feel. I think we need more time to get more answers. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. The next speaker is Martha Jane Reichert. Good morning.
Good morning.
State your name, please.
Martha Jane Reichert. I live at 3303 West Rancho Road in Golden Valley. I disagree with this altogether because I like to walk my dog. We usually will walk, when I'm able, 2.5 miles a day, almost every day. And when I walk, I let her off leash. I have been informed by the county or the animal control that if I stay within Walnut Creek, because there's houses there, I have to have her on a leash. So I go over to open land. There's nothing over there but sometimes cows, sometimes donkeys, and brush. So I walk a road so I'm older, I don't want to fall and hurt myself, but I always have a phone with me. My dog likes to go look and see where the rabbits have been and where the pheasants have been, and she's close enough that I see her, and if not, I call her back to me. But I don't think this is the right thing. I have an acre. She likes to bark at cars she doesn't like the sounds of, like the diesel-powered vehicles that come by, and now I found out she has a couple of cars that she says hi to as they drive down my road. I don't think this is necessary, and I don't understand why we need to jump. I agree with the first speaker that there's a better way to do this. Dogs in our area, especially Golden Valley, are often used to make us aware of people coming near our houses. You already know there's problems in Golden Valley. Now I'm watching the animal posts on there, and I'm seeing dogs are being shot. I'm more worried about the dogs being shot. My dog, when she does get out, is often because I have a gate open I forgot about. She stays within usually 2 blocks. and I can go get in my car, find out where she is, and she's ready to jump back in. I have a walkabout dog in my neighborhood. Periodically, I guess he digs under the fence. He comes and says hi to everybody in the neighborhood, gets all the dogs barking. When I find him, I sometimes feed him and give him water. Ultimately, I put him in the car and take him back to his owner's yard. And I open the back gate, put him back in, and he stays there. The last several times I've notified the owner, he says he never knew how he got out. He's digging out. But I also know that dogs are being let out in my neighborhood and never found again. I'm saying I live on one side of Golden Valley, but I see these happening at the other side of Golden Valley also. People are letting dogs out on purpose so they can go into their yards. I don't think we need to put our dogs on leashes. I think our dogs should be allowed to do what they need to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Attorney Esplin.
So
I'd like
thank
to give
you.
the floor to you and let you explain this ordinance to us.
Sure.
I believe there might be some changes in order.
And I'm happy to answer any questions that the board or the public has. First, the discussion from the last meeting was the issue of the dog at large. And as I said previously, the definition of dog at large is taken from the state statute, and so I wanted to stay consistent with that. I took the suggestions the board made in terms of trying to see how we could enforce or reduce the enforcement of the at-large provision. And so what I did was, and you'll see it in the backup, I modified, we kept the definition of dog at large, but then we said, okay, these animals cannot be at large. Things like a dog in heat, a vicious dog, a dog that's in rabies quarantine. And then the one to address Ms. Martinez's concerns and also Supervisor Gould's concerns, we also made it so that if it's on the property, it would not be dog at large. So if the dog is on property, regardless of the size of your property, if it's 20 acres or if it's 1 acre or half acre or quarter acre, you name it, as long as it's on your property, it wouldn't be dog at large. And that captures the essence of what dog at large is, right? I mean, if the dog is on your property and you're taking care of your dog and making sure it's on there, regardless of whether you have a fence on it or not, if the dog's on your property, we shouldn't cite you. I think that's kind of the gist of what you were saying at the last board meeting is, hey, if I have all this land and the dog's still on my property, why should I be cited for dog at large? So I changed that part. Another part to that, though, I also did was the voice control. And I said, look, if the dog is within 100 feet of voice control, then that also will not be dog at large. There are some concerns, though, on that voice command part. I met with the Sheriff's Department. In the Sheriff's Department, the Animal Control Division, they're responsible for enforcing this. So I absolutely want to defer to their judgment because they're the ones on the ground. They're the ones that are doing it. They're the ones that are seeing this. And they have concerns about the voice control part. And the reason is because what happens is you'll have people who their dog will go out and attack somebody, attack a person or attack property or do something else, and then they'll say, come back. They will order the dog to come back, which the dog will comply, the dog will come back. They will cite the person for dog at large, and then they go into court and they say, well, hey, the dog was always under my voice command, even though the dog had gone out and had attacked somebody. And so in some instances, the defendant has been able to get that case dismissed, that charge dismissed, because they were, quote, under the voice command. And so I think that's a legitimate concern that the Sheriff's Department has. Their recommendation is reviewing that part of the voice command part. So basically, the dog at large would be that if the dog is on your property, it would not be at large. But otherwise, you would need to have a leash for your dog if it was off the property. So that was their recommendation. I'm open to any thoughts and discussions from this end, from this body. I'll also say that in terms of moving forward, I still stand by the recommendation that the board adopt it sooner rather than later. I don't think there's any urgency in the sense of, boy, we got to get it done. I just meant we need to do it done. It's part and parcel with modifying the Muni Code, because the way we're setting up the muni code, when we withdraw that, we're going back to what the supervisors have originally passed, and so I just don't want it to go back to that 94 version or 96 version, whatever that was. I'd rather have something in place, updated, moving forward with what we've got. So I'll take any questions that you have.
Madam Chair?
Supervisor Angus, go ahead.
So just so I understand this, if the dogs, and how many dogs can be on the property?
Well, under the law, under the proposed changes, if you have a dog, if you have more than 5 or more dogs on your property, then you would need to get a kennel permit unless each one of those dogs are licensed, at which point you would not need a kennel permit under this ordinance. However, you would need to get a kennel permit through planning and zoning. There's a planning and zoning provision that requires that there's 5 or more dogs, you would have to get a zoning or a zoning permit, or I don't know the exact terms for that, but they would still have to get it for that. So anytime there's 5 or more for zoning purposes, you're going to have to have something like that.
But they can go free, untethered on the property.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. And, about this voice command thing, I just find it very hard to believe that if my dog gets out of my property and attacks someone, and I say, here, come Fido, and he comes back to me, that I'm let off the hook. That doesn't make any sense to me. If they hurt somebody, they're going to be, I don't know, maybe this was a weird fluke of a case, but I don't think that kind of reasoning should affect how we go forward, because I just don't see that happening.
Yeah, bad facts make bad law. That's something you'll hear in law school and hear judges say over and over, and it's so true. Bad facts oftentimes make bad law, okay? And so you don't always want to go off of one, but I think they have a legitimate concern when somebody says, hey, the dog, I can order the dog to come back at any time, and so therefore it's under my voice control. And I think a savvy defendant would be able to, could convince a judge to do that, potentially.
Even if there was someone hurt?
No, not necessarily. And it's one thing, they may not be able to get dog at large, but there may be other ordinances or other things that they were responsible for and that they would be liable for because your dog just damaged somebody else. I'm just saying for the dog at large, they would not be able, they may not be able to cite for that. That's the limitation. And the other thing too, and this is really for the public, for those who spoke too, is really what we're talking about are kind of the bad actors, so to speak, those who are not following the law. Most of the people will obey the law. Most of the people, take care of their dogs. The people who spoke today, I have no doubt that you take care of your dogs and you're responsible. This is not likely going to affect you because you follow the law. You do what you're supposed to do. Really, what these changes are for people who say, you know what, I don't want to, I want to let my dogs go free and come what may, what happens. So that's what this is talking about.
The woman who said she takes her dog out into the field, that would affect her.
It would. That's correct. In the sense, you're exactly right. I don't want to, hide the ball. That's correct. The way it would be written, the way that I'm proposing, would be that she would need to have a leash for it. I can tell you, in talking with animal control, the way they work, the way they practice, is, there's a lot of discretion. It's kind of like we have speeding laws, but sometimes the police officer will have officer discretion to say, hey, you were 5 miles per hour over. I'm not going to cite you here for speeding, but if you could slow things down. You see that in the same way with the animal control. They'll see an owner that's responsible and taking care of their dog, but allowing the dog having some freedom off the leash. Most likely they're not going to cite that owner. They're not, because they're responsible and they're doing what they're supposed to do. And talking with the officers, they'll say, hey, just so you know, you need to make sure you have a leash. Thank you and have a good day, and go on their way. Or even sometimes they would actually even give a leash. They have a handful of leashes and they would say, here you go, here's a leash. But they wouldn't cite them. They don't give them a ticket or anything. They just say, hey, make sure you have your dog. And that's part of the deterrence part of law enforcement. Law enforcement want to have that discretion. You want to be able to have the discretion to say, okay, I can see this owner as being responsible, I'll go ahead and do it, versus someone that's not being responsible be able to have that. Now, can law enforcement officers take advantage of that? Yeah, they could. But I trust the Sheriff's Department. They are good officers and good patrol and good employees that try their best. And for the most part, I think they do try to give that discretion. And I trust the animal control officers very well. They do a good job of that. But it's a matter of what kind of leeway you want.
Okay, well, thank you for coming back with some of the changes that we asked. And just one more question. So if we pass this today, and let's say there's some unintended consequences or something that we didn't think about, it can always be brought back and be revised.
Yes, and I would recommend that. And I talked to the animal control officers about that as well, because, you know, once it gets passed, there could be some unintended consequences or some things that, you know, well, we didn't want this, and so then we come back with an amendment. Do I want that to happen? No, because it's so hard to get things passed in the first place on anything. But absolutely we can. There is a process. We would have to give a public notice and go through the amendment process and things, but we could do that. So the way it's presented, my recommendation is to approve it, but to remove the voice control portions that I suggested. Or if you're not comfortable with that, limit it not to 100 feet, but something much less, so that you can say, so like, for example, this person that spoke, when she lets her dogs roam, give it 10 feet or 20 feet or something else. And obviously, hopefully the animal control officers will use proper discretion when they see that happening. And I'll also say one other thing too, is that, you know, the person that spoke here with letting her dog, she's out in the desert. She's in areas where there's not a lot of people. But if you go to other places in the county that is in the county, so take, for example, Mojave Valley, Fort Mojave, where there's a lot more population and things, then you would want to have more leash things going on in those parts, because there's more residential areas, as opposed to where this person was speaking out in Golden Valley or in the Yucca area, where there's a lot more ranches and things like that.
That's all I have. Any other questions? Supervisor Wilson?
Comment. I still have a great deal of concern of people that will be in proximity to these dogs, walking, possibly even on their property. So we can have up to 5 dogs on, say, 20 acres without getting a permit. Is that correct? Or do we have to get a permit at 5, correct?
Permit at 5.
Right.
A zoning permit, if they're all if they're all licensed, you would not have to get a permit for the criminal portions of it, but you'd still have to get for the zoning, yes.
Right. So let's say, for instance, there's 4 Rottweilers on this property out in the middle of Brown Valley. And a friend of mine and I decided to ride our horses on BLM property, which borders this private property. These 4 Rottweilers come over and terrorize these 2 horses. So that owner of the 4 Rottweilers is responsible for the damage to the horses. Is that correct?
It could very well be, yes. I would say.
So they're coming off their property onto BLM property and injure 2 horses.
Yes.
Who's responsible?
It would be the owner of the dogs, because the dogs have left their property. And once they have left their property and there's no leash on them, the owner is not controlling them. Once they're off the property, then the owner of the dogs would be responsible.
But prior to this, we've indicated that we don't want those dogs running loose all the time. They have to be on a leash or within the boundaries of a fence.
Correct.
And that's my concern, because I've been in those situations. And a great deal of damage has been done to the horses, and luckily none of the humans were hurt. But I think we're going a little bit too far in our laxness, thinking that every dog is going to be a perfect dog. So that's my concern.
I think that's a legitimate concern. If I could answer that, I think that's why we were trying to do somewhat of a compromise to say, okay, if the dog is on your own property.
Well, a compromise is not going to work when I've got a bleeding horse or if I've got a broken leg due to the non-diligence of those owners of those dogs.
Very true. And
so at this point, we're just going to say it's going to happen, and then you can sue that person. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Sure. I think what we're trying to say is that if the dog is off your property, you need to have a leash on it. You got to have a leash. And if you don't have a leash and the dog is off your property, then you could be cited for dog at large. But if the dog remains on your property, if the dog remains on your property, then you're not going to be cited for the dog at large. And the theory is that, hey, if somebody's coming onto my property and doing something, then it should not be as much as my responsibility. If I see the dog and I'm going onto the property and I'm putting myself at risk, then that burden then kind of shifts over to the person who came onto the property,
That's
so to
understandable.
speak. The person who gave the example of running the leash, running the dog, we had that same debate among the animal control officers and the sheriff deputies, and they had that same thing. Well, why can't we do this or this? And this was kind of the solution we came up with, that if it's off the property, use a leash. If it's on the property, then you wouldn't have to.
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
I just want to make it clear that obviously you certainly don't want to jeopardize another individual's right to utilize a property, utilize public property or open property or the desert, just so long as they're not in trespass. And I think we can all agree upon that. And certainly having dogs at large, if they're vicious and not controlled, jeopardizes other people's use of that public property. And I think the key in the discussion is that whether dogs are controlled or not, or if they're allowed to act viciously or aggressively, then they're certainly not controlled regardless. And I just wanted to make the point that the way it appears that this is presented, it would prohibit me from going out and training my bird dogs out in open fields or out in the desert, or enjoying them and letting them chase game or even hunting with them, and and utilizing them for the purpose that they were intended. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Mr. Esplin, can you address that? Does it prevent hunting dogs from being utilized?
Actually, it does not. So if you look at Section H, this section shall not apply to the use of dogs for hunting, being trained for hunting, tracking, agriculture, the control of livestock, showing, or law enforcement activities.
I withdraw my comments. Thank you. I missed that part.
I see that
Madam
brings a
Chairman.
smile to your face.
We were looking out for you, Mr. Hendricks.
I'm glad that's the case. Thank you.
Madam Chairman.
Supervisor Gould?
I've done it.
Now you broke it. You can't speak any
I
longer.
was messing with the wire accidentally with my foot, and now it doesn't work.
There you go.
Let's see. We need to remember that laws only control law-abiding citizens. If somebody has 4 Hun battle dogs that are going to run off the property and attack somebody, they probably don't give a dang what we do here today or what we do here in the future. They're not going to follow the rule. So all you really do is limit law-abiding citizens by doing things to control these outliers. My argument is I'm sovereign on my own property. The Constitution says I'm sovereign on my own property. As long as my animals stay on my property, then it's my issue. If I allow my animals to get off my property, then it becomes a government issue. So I just want to keep that in your mind. Thank you.
Okay. Supervisor Watson?
One last thing, Chairman. Under Article 1, Section Definitions, line number 8, where it says livestock means neat animals. Well, I'll agree several of those animals are neat, horses and horses. As far as sheep, goats, swine, mules, and asses, I'm not sure if they're that neat or not. But I think possibly the state statute needs to read livestock means meat animals.
So we
Would
can
you
take
have
that up
someone
with
take a
our
look into that?
representatives.
Or is that the term used?
Is that a legal term, neat animals?
I think it is, but I'll defer to Supervisor Gould. He and I had just a brief discussion before the meeting started about neat animals.
Madam Chairman.
Yes, go ahead.
Actually, a neat animal is a bovine. It's actually boat horse and boat indica. It's cattle. We needed to change the punctuation in that so it says neat animals, comma, horses, sheep, goats, swine.
Very good. Okay. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Yeah, and just so you're aware, for full disclosure, my grandfather was a sheep herder, okay? And I won't tell you the things that I learned from him about it, but he wasn't a big fan of sheep
I'm sure
either.
there are some neat sheep and some neat goats.
Yeah.
Just haven't seen them yet. Thank you.
But I think the board here has to make a decision, though, about that, about the leash. The recommendation that the county attorney's office that we give is that the board adopt this ordinance with the change as suggested by Supervisor Gould on the definition of livestock, and then also in Article 3, Section 1, we recommend taking out the voice control within 100 feet of a competent person, that language in there, to remove that stuff so that it's clear that we're just talking about property. And then finally, one more suggestion. I got this from our prosecuting division. They asked us to adopt for dog liability, adopting ARS 11-1020 into the ordinance, and that helps delineate the injury part. It's injury to any person or damage to any property by a dog while at large shall be the full responsibility of the dog owner or persons responsible for the dog when such damage was inflicted. So that's state statute. We should have that in there. I didn't put that in there. I said, well, if it's already state statute, why do we need to put it in here? And his take was, when it's many times the animal control ordinances, the animal control officers use this ordinance when they cite people, and then if we don't keep that, then it makes it more difficult for the county prosecutor. They have to amend the complaint to add the state statute, and so it's more paperwork and hassle to be able to amend that. So they suggested to just add that in there. So we would ask to adopt the ordinances with the additions and corrections I just made.
Madam Chair, I'd make a motion to accept with the attorney's corrections to get it going, so we don't miss something later.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, I think we'll do a roll call on this one.
I
Jenny?
had one more question.
Supervisor Gould, yes.
Attorney Esplin, one of the testifiers mentioned something about anti-tethering. Is there anti-tethering in the proposed ordinance?
I don't think so. I mean,
I didn't see it.
yeah, I don't think so. I mean, if it's animal cruelty, I don't know. I don't know of an anti-tethering provision in here.
Thank you.
So.
Okay. Go ahead, Jenny.
Supervisor Watson?
Yes.
Supervisor Angus?
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson?
Yes.
Supervisor Gould?
Aye.
Chairman Bishop?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you very much.
And
Going on-
I'm sorry, Chairman Bishop, I'll make those changes and then present them. I make these changes and we'll move forward. This goes into effect when we pass the Muni Code, if that's passed. That would coincide at the same time. If the Muni Code one does not pass, then we would have to go back and try to get this to.
And I think that's going to be on the next agenda, if I'm not mistaken.
Is it? Yeah.
Okay. Okay, going on to, are we finished now?
Madam Chair, Supervisor Watson had to leave the meeting.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, he warned me ahead of time that he had to leave at 11, so we appreciate him staying for this last vote. Going on to item number 44, discussion of possible action, Ray, approve changes to personnel policies and procedures, section 2.2, compensation program.
Madam Chair?
Supervisor
May
Angus.
I ask Mr. Hendricks to kind of explain why this was all necessary at this point? I see a lot of changes, and I'm not really quite sure that I agree with all of them. So can you explain it?
Madam Chairman, Supervisor Angus, I believe half of this requested changes is for just to provide additional clarification. The other portion is a philosophical change, and I'm going to try to guess what you're referring to. What philosophically, from an administration and HR perspective, what this does is provides actually for salary placement and other prerogatory decisions. It provides more authority to the department heads and where HR is making recommendation and on things instead of actually making decisions regarding the hiring of employees. The reason we wanted to put more responsibility into the department head's hands is because we believe the department head, they're hired and have the ability to utilize HR guidelines in determining what salary placement should be or different decisions regarding hiring and dealing with employees. So HR makes a recommendation. We also, the department heads have considerable latitude in taking HR's recommendation, but they have the ultimate decision on what they do with different things. The other philosophical change is the manager, me, will be the ultimate decider. If there's any conflicts between what the director wants to do and actually his decisions have to come up to my level, HR is still in the position of recommending. And the other change that comes to my mind is it gives me the authority, it raises my level of authority on recommending what range an employee is hired instead of having to bring that directly in front of the board.
And this is just about hiring.
It's across the board philosophy.
It's across the board.
About
So, we've been talking about this ever since I've been on the board. So what you're basically saying now is that we're going with that model, that the departments have their budget and they can use it the way they see fit. So why would it ever come before the board again? So you're telling me that it will never come before the board again to give the county employees a raise?
No, ma'am. If they have an applicant, what I was referring to, Madam Chairman, Supervisor Angus, is that the manager inadvertently was only given authority for approval up to a step 4 for the hiring of an individual into a department, and anything above a step 4 required board approval. We raised that because that was a decision that was made not by the board to lower that threshold. It was made by HR. So we're going back to what it originally was prior to 2013. My hiring authority, my approval authority, anything above, I believe that's, if I'm not mistaken, that's a step 5. Anything above a step 5, I can't remember if it's a step 5 or step 6.
Why did it change in 2013?
We had a workshop in 2013 to where certain things were discussed, and I believe Supervisor Moss wanted more authority vested in the board for certain things, and instead of the board voting to go ahead and make those changes, HR took it upon themselves to insert those into our personnel policies.
Okay, I might have a few more.
Did you have any other questions, specific questions that I could help, possibly help answer?
Not right now.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion. Okay, I'll make a motion to approve. Is there a second? Okay, motion dies. Going on to item number 45. Discussion of possible action, approve the commencement of a 15-day notice period in accordance with ARS 11-256 of Mojave County's intent to enter into a farm agreement for the purpose of farming 15 acres of Mojave-owned farmland, APN 225-26-109 in Mojave Valley with 4B Farms. Further adopt the process outlined in the notice proposed farmland agreement, which allows interested person to request in writing that the proposed lease be submitted to public auction. If no request for public auction are received by the conclusion of the 15-day period notice, further authorize the chairman of the Board of Supervisors to sign and execute a farm lease agreement 19-LS-03 between 4B Farms and Mojave County at the rate of $70 per acre per annum for a one-year period commencing upon final signature with 4 additional one-year renewal options. There you go. Does anybody have any questions, comments? Supervisor Gould.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Attorney Esplin, can you explain to us why this does not have to go out to bid again?
Yeah, so it's there's a number of different ways that the county can lease property. Generally speaking, you have to do it by public auction and notice and so forth. This is one of the exceptions. There's a couple of different exceptions. Usually it's exceptions for governments, or if you're leasing to other governments. In this one, if you're leasing to a private person, if you do these 2 steps, the 2 steps being, let me look at it again. One is we notify the public, hey, this is what we're going to do, give them a 15-day notice, and 2, adopt the procedures for the public to notify if they want to send it by auction. So we're just following 11256E, and that's how to do it. You do this 2-step process that we're putting in here, or not 2 steps, I'm sorry, there's 2 parts, 2-part process.
So is it a new lease, or then is it the remainder of the existing lease?
I think it's a new lease with the new owner. It's the same terms, I believe. I'd have to double check, but I think it's the same terms or similar terms.
And the lease runs for 5 years, not
Is that what it is?
25 years that I saw in the press.
I didn't think it was, I think it was for 1 year with options to renew, wasn't it?
1 plus individual 1-year options up to 4 renewals, Madam Chairman.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of unusual. You don't see this situation come up very often, but 11256E allows for the county to do it this way. And so that's what we're recommending as well, that you follow this procedure.
Yeah, Madam Chairman, just may I expand on that just a little bit?
Please do.
And I appreciate all the work that our attorney has done on this, but basically, as we all know, Wakamoto Farms has declined to continue the lease. And we've had, when we looked at what interest may be out there, the only interest we had was from Mr. Sherrill to lease the farm, which the leasing of the farm provides us with an opportunity to be an electorate in the district, and that's why it's important to do that. And so we doubt it. There's a time is of the essence. He has to, that land has to be farmed. It can't lay fallow for a long period of time. And whoever leases it has a window to plant.
Sure.
And so this provision also allows that if a lease is for a nominal amount, I think it's less than $5,000, that we can follow this procedure. And what this actually does, if the board decides to go with this, is, if you all recall, we were when we did an appraisal last time for the lease, we get like $70 a year for leasing the property. That was the appraised value. The appraisal costs like over $3,000 to have it appraised. So we would, if we followed the other portion of the statute, we would, in essence, either accept the old appraisal or burn another $3,000 to get an accurate lease dollar amount for the property. So we're actually saving money in doing this. Now, like it states, if someone shows interest between this notification period, public information notification period, then we have to fall back and go through the old statute. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Madam Chairman, Mr. Hendricks, is this particular farmer going to farm the other land in the strange word that we call it?
Oh, the consortium?
Consortium. That was the word I was searching for.
Madam Chairman, Supervisor Gould, I'm not sure that the answer to that question. I would imagine he would pick it up. That would be my guess. But you know what? I was more concerned about the county's property, and we're not going to be in a consortium. This would be a lease separate from any of that, so we would divorce ourselves from that that avenue and enter into an agreement solely with Mr. Sherrill.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? Okay. Do we have a motion?
Madam Chairman,
Go
I'll
ahead.
move that item 45 be adopted.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. There's no one opposed. It passes. Okay, going on to the last item on the agenda, item 46, discussion and possible action. Ray approved the appointments of members of the Mojave County Board of Supervisors to regional, state, and Mojave County boards. Okay, so Supervisor Watson has left, and I assume that he's happy with the boards that he represented. So is there any discussion? Anybody want to change boards around?
Well, Madam Chair.
Supervisor Watson's not here. We could take this opportunity to load him up.
Okay, we'll give everything.
We could do that.
Well, I just want to say that I have never once been to an Arizona Secure Rural Schools Coalition Advisory Council. I've never been notified, don't know anything about it.
Which number is that?
Number 1 on the regional and state boards. So I don't know what to say about that. Does it, Supervisor Johnson, you know a little bit more about this. Is it still in existence as far as you know?
Supervisor Watson wanted us to be part of that because of built funding.
All right, well, I'll talk to Supervisor Watson and see if it's still in existence, and I'll be happy to do it. But I want to stay on I would like to stay as number 7, but because of that, I'm open to doing other things this year, and I'm hoping to, is it on here, Jean? The County Supervisors Association Legislative Policy Committee,
Yeah, that's
the
number
LPC.
3.
Yeah, number 3, because Supervisor Bishop is now the second
First vice chair.
vice chair of it, so she'll be there anyway. So maybe we could I think maybe we could co-do it. I would like to do it and then make the reports back here about the legislative, and then Supervisor Bishop can do reports on some other NACO-related things.
So you're willing to accept the CSA legislative liaison position?
if
and I
that
will
is good
step
with the
down
board.
and be the alternate in the event
Yes,
that you
alternate, that's a
can't
great
attend.
idea. That's what I would like.
Yeah, I would support that. Okay. Any other changes? Supervisor Johnson, you good with where you are on your appointments?
Problem with me.
Okay, Supervisor Gould?
I'm fine, Madam Chair.
Okay, so that would be the only change then. Supervisor Angus as the CSA legislative liaison, myself as the alternate, and everything else remains the same.
And I'll find out about that Rural Schools Coalition.
Okay. Do we need a motion to approve that?
Yeah.
Chairman Bishop, yes, please, if you would just.
I'll make a motion that we approve the members' board positions.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope. Motion passes. Okay, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.